Hello and welcome back to Magical Task Force. Turmentic here, and today we're going to be talking about Adventure Sync. That's right, it's finally here, and I want to make sure you all know how to actually enable it on your devices, whether it's Android or iOS. Android seems to be a little bit easier to actually get it to work on, but iOS isn't that hard. Basically, if you're iOS, you're going to be using the Health app. If you are Droid, you're going to be using the Google Fit app. But that's what I'm going to do is just walk you through exactly how to do it with iOS and Android. Talk a little bit about exactly what it is, everything like that. So let's jump right in. So on iOS, honestly, it doesn't matter what kind of phone you have. When you log in, it should prompt you, and it actually gives you the instructions right there when you prompt it to enable Adventure Sync. If you're having a little bit of trouble with that, though, I mean, honestly, all you need to do is if you're using iOS, go into your settings, into your general settings, and then go down, scroll all the way up until you actually find the Wizards Unite app. Click it, and the main thing you really want to make sure that you do is you set the permissions to always know where your location is. That's the big thing with Adventure Sync, especially learning from Pokemon Go, is that it has to know your location. It actually physically tracks your location, the steps, everything like that. So you have to always have that active in order to be able to get the actual distance of what you're walking. Now, if it doesn't automatically enable it, like for example, if you don't use Pokemon Go or anything like that, that's what I'm saying. You go all the way down to the Wizards Unite app, click on it, make sure that it always has your location. What you can also do is you can actually go to the Health app as well in that same settings area, and you can double check to make sure that it is active as well, and double check that the Health app is actually recognizing Wizards Unite. It's not it's not required, but I always usually same thing I did with Pokemon Go. I'll click everything instead of just doing steps or whatever like that. I'll actually make sure that all of those things are actually active, so you can use that as you will. Now again, going on to Droid, it's similar as well too. I mean, there isn't really much difference. You need to make sure that the Wizards Unite app is always, like I said, always knows your location. That is on always, so you again, so it can track your distance, things like that. The big difference is that you use Google Fit. Now, you can use other apps in order to potentially calculate the distance, I guess, that you walk. But I know for a fact that the Health app on iOS and that the Google Fit app on Android are the two that primarily it works with. James over at Wizards News has a really good video about how to hook up like a Fitbit to it, because that's the thing with Adventure Sync, is that you always have to have the phone with you. You don't have to have the game open, but you have to have the phone with you in order to get that distance calculated. You can use an Apple Watch, you can use a Fitbit, you can use things like that count your steps, and you can sync it to your game. That's a little bit further in depth, so I'm not going to really talk about that today. But yeah, so there are other options you can do instead of just having to use those two basic ones. I do know that I think it's the Android Health app. I think there is one that you have to pay for, so you shouldn't have to spend any money in order to get Google Fit or to get the Apple Health app. Those are the two free ones that normally come standard on the phones. Now, there's been a lot of people who have been posting about like, oh, I log in and it doesn't actually count any of my steps. Well, same thing with Pokemon Go. It might not automatically recognize that those steps have actually been taken. It takes a minute for it to actually update its system in order to be like, oh, you did walk 1.5 kilometers in order to open up something. So double check, give it a second. Don't immediately expect it to pop up, oh, portkey is open. It might need a minute to actually refresh the system. I know that it happens a lot, like when I'm playing Pokemon Go, for example. I'll log in, and then like 10-15 seconds after I've logged in, boom, I'll hatch all of the eggs that I had incubating. So this is very, very similar. It might not happen immediately, but it will happen. If you are having trouble and it's not recognizing any of your steps, just like I said, go back through those settings and make sure that you have location set to always, and that your Health app is actually recognizing Wizards Unite just so it can actually read that data in order to process that into steps. Something kind of interesting too that I didn't know was that the game won't actually recognize any of your steps that you're taking if you use Adventure Sync while the game is open. Because at that point, what it's doing is it's actually using your location in the game to measure the distance. So, couple things to say about that. The way that distance is tracked in Wizards Unite is very similar to Pokemon Go. It doesn't take into account turns. It doesn't take into account like 90-degree turns. It goes from point A to point B. So if you have the game open, like, and I always talk about Sandy Run. Sandy Run is a big park that goes in a circle. It doesn't always recognize all of those steps because it doesn't take into effect the actual circle. Now, if I actually had Adventure Sync on and I walk in that circle and I have the game turned off, it will recognize all of those steps because at that point it's actually recognizing the steps I'm taking, not the actual distance from point A to point B. So that's something that's actually pretty interesting. I didn't realize that I didn't realize that at first. So I wanted to kind of share it because it's been a big thing I've noticed is that people the last couple of days have been like, oh, well, it's not recognizing my steps. And it's like, well, if you have the game open, it's not going to recognize those steps. It's going to actually recognize the distance from point A to point B. So that's just something to keep in the back of your head. I'm really excited about this update, though. It's something that they've been talking about for a while now, and it's nice to actually have it in the game. I feel like we lost a lot of players because of port keys, them being harder to open, you having to have the game open, things like that. So I'm hoping that this will bring some of them back to it, because I know that it did with Pokemon Go. When Pokemon Go actually released Adventure Sync, there were a lot of friends I had that were like, oh, I'm going back into it. Because at that point, it's one of those where you can set up like 8 port keys, walk into a store, come back out, and half of them might be open. I was checking it off and on today, and it was actually really cool because like I didn't have to do anything, and boom, my port keys were open, and I've gotten so accustomed to that from Pokemon Go that I'm really excited that it's back in the game for Wizards Unite, because it, especially with some of the harder quests and things like that we have, like the upcoming Brilliant Event Part 2 and Part 1, where you had to open 15 portmanteaus to finish the 4 basic quests and the bonus. This is really going to help. This is something, if you're not familiar with Adventure Sync, you can honestly put all of your port keys on, leave it in your pocket, and do your daily routine, go to work, whatever you need to, especially if you're super active, you work, you move around a lot. At the end of the day, check it, and then boom, your port keys will actually be open. So I'm really excited about this update. Like I was saying before too, if you are interested in how to hook up like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or anything like that, I will leave a link to James's video down in the description. Lots of big changes coming up with portmanteaus though too, and port keys. I was going to do a video about some of the changes, but I think that they're going to do even more changes, so I'm going to hold off on doing that. I'm really excited that they've actually differentiated once the port key is open what exactly it is, 2K, 5K, 10K, because before it was really annoying not knowing what am I going to jump into. Just to give you a brief overview of that though, 2Ks now look like the boot like always, 5Ks look like a kettle, and 10K port keys actually are the deflated ball that we had a couple of Brilliant events ago. Like I said, I'll go more in depth with some of the port keys, the switching of the foundables, things like that, my thoughts on some of the foundables and all of that when it's actually settled, so probably sometime maybe next week. I personally, just to throw that out there, I'm personally really excited about the change up of the foundables that are inside of the port keys. It's very similar to, like, I always go back to Pokemon Go. It's very similar to Pokemon Go where they change what are in the eggs every so often. So I think it'll be super helpful, especially for some of the people who can't find certain foundables. The dragon eggs were in there. That's awesome. But we'll talk about that at another time. Stick around though. I should actually hopefully get a Brilliant Part 2 breakdown video out either later tonight, maybe tomorrow, going over The Darkest of Times Part 2, which starts on Tuesday of next week. But my name is Turmentic. Thanks for giving the video a view. Give it a like if you found it helpful. Definitely stick around. I'll have a lot more content coming out soon. Leave a comment down below and let me know how excited you are for Adventure Sync. If you have any questions or anything like that, leave a comment down below as well. I will answer them to the best of my ability. But once again, my name is Turmentic, and thank you so much for checking out the video. Have a wonderful night.